All right, so we're going to start out with just a small little activity just to talk about a few different game progression models that are out there that exist. So this doesn't have to necessarily tie to any assignment or this class, but this is just good information to understand about game design. What types of progression are out there that have been successful, how you can build on these and apply them to your own projects. So the first two at the top here are linear and string of pearls. So basically these are just a chart that will just depict how the game starts, the gameplay in between, and then the ending, right? So linear and string of pearls, you can see they're pretty similar here to where linear and string of pearls both have the single start, so all players are going to experience the same thing. Here linear is just completely linear gameplay, no branching, no decisions, no alternate ways to change the game, and then there's just a final ending. And now here you'll see in String of Pearls it's pretty similar, right? You have that same fixed ending, but in the middle you have these choke points, right? And before the choke points you have these little sections of non-linear gameplay. So there is a little bit of options, there's variation, anything can really happen at this point, but players are always going to get to this point. It's always going to end up like this. So does anyone have any examples at all for linear or string of pearls? Jacob?
String of pearls, Wolfenstein: The New Order.
All right, and what makes that I haven't played that one, but what makes that a string of pearls?
Each mission, you start and it just says, eventually you have to get to the choke point. It says that's the big objective at the end, but how you go about going around, you can either sneak around and just assassinate people, or you can just go in running around with guns blazing.
Cool. So you have a lot of different options, but you're going to make it to the end. You're going to complete that objective, and no matter if you sneak around or kill everyone, you're probably going to see the same cutscene at the end, right? Something like that? Yeah, exactly. Eric?
For String of Pearls, the Rage and Destiny, you start, you have a boss, and you choke point there, and then you do whatever. You have a boss, choke
Okay, yeah. I can see that. So, and that's a good example that's a great example of, so Destiny itself, right? Probably the game itself is not String of Pearls, right? It's probably something that we're going to get to later. But one single entity of it, like the missions or the one little raid in it can be a string of pearls. So it's good analysis there. Wyatt?
I think a lot of Final Fantasy games are like string of pearls. You'd have non-linear gameplay for some parts of it, and then you hit that choke point. Oh no, that's not true then. That one's actually I would say linear, because you have to follow certain things in Final Fantasy.
No, it'll still go with the string of pearls, because a lot of Final Fantasy games, you go through the story and everything, you hit the point where you can pretty much go anywhere you want to, do whatever you want, then you still gotta go that one path.
You can't do
Yeah.
too much without having to pass certain things.
But regardless, pretty much all of the Final Fantasy games always has that one ending that never changes.
And in between, you have those points where players are gonna see or interact with the same thing throughout the way. Okay. So yeah, that would definitely fit in there. D'Angelo?
Is this specific to this video game?
No, it's a great point. You don't have to just think about video games.
Monopoly be linear? Because it's basically just you rolling a dice going straight the whole time.
Candyland would be a better example for linear.
Yeah, I think Monopoly may even fit to String of Pearls, because your choke points would basically be when a player gets eliminated, right? So here you start, everyone has the same amount of money, you have 4 people and everyone's happy. Here at this point, you've bought property, you've traded money. At this one point, people are starting to get, frustrated or annoyed, and someone gets knocked out, and then, rinse and repeat throughout. Yeah. CJ?
I guess The Last of Us would be a good one, just because as you're going through the game and everything, you hit some non-linear gameplay between the actual gameplay portion where you just walk around, check out different buildings and everything, but you eventually gotta keep on going through, hit those choke points where you gotta go through
Okay. Yeah, and that just brings up a good point of most story mode, campaign mode type games that have levels that you sequentially go through fit into String of Pearls, right? So this like Halo, right? So the first level, non-linear, whatever, however you want to play through it, and you get to the end, you see that cutscene of that level. You get to the next level, you can do it however you want, but there's still that choke point you get to. So a lot of these shooter games or third-person adventure games that have levels where you start, or chapters they'll all fit into String of Pearls. Marcus? Okay. So just a very straightforward board games that you guys have probably learned from GD1 that don't have a lot of meaningful choice, right? You're just going through the motion. Another one for a linear would just be a foot race, right? I'm just starting at the beginning and running all the way to the end, and that's it. It's just about how fast can I do it. That's the gameplay. Yeah. Eric?
For String of Pearls, hockey, because there's 30 periods.
Yeah, exactly. So any type of sport, really. So it could be hockey, football, baseball. In between, in each quarter, in each inning, in each period, anything could happen, but the period is going to end, or the inning is going to end at some point. So I'm just going to say sporting event. For any type of game there with quarters or halves or really anything. So good stuff. So on to the next two, branching and reductive. So these look, obviously similar to each other, but are flip-flopped in one way. So branching starts out with, everyone starts with the exact same experience. So everyone starts the game, can play through the exact same way, but as they progress, they start to get options that actually affect gameplay. So the decisions that you're making and the choices that you make will affect your gameplay later on, and that will end up having this unique ending, right? So all players will experience some different ending. And reductive is pretty much the opposite, where you can a lot of different options to start with, totally open-ended, a lot of different starting points, and then as you progress, it slowly gets reduced down to where you will always get that same final ending. CJ, got an example?
I have an example for the branching portion right there.
Okay.
Break like the game Bravely Default. Like there's like a different.
Bless you.
There's like you like each crystal whatever. If you don't like having to like activate it right, then you're kind of fucked throughout for the rest of the game or whatever. And if you don't, I think there's like 2 or 3 different endings to that one.
Okay.
Where one where you get all crystals working again, and then another one where
It's completely different?
yeah.
Okay. D'Angelo?
Alright, so I don't know if this would be branching or reductive just because I'm going to say Skyrim, but I would say branching because everyone does start off the same way, like you have to start at the beginning the same way. So
Can't you
just do whatever, you can branch out. But
can't you can't you basically choose your character though in the beginning and like your class?
You always start on
on
the card.
Yeah, you start off.
Okay.
Now,
Same starting point. So the
branching,
first branch is when
Okay, true.
but the reason why I think it could be reductive, why it could be reductive too, is because because with the unique endings, if you do play, like, you don't have to play the story in Skyrim. You can just do side missions, and that can be its own story. But if you want like an ending to anything, if you play the story, you get that ending. So I'm a little confused. Like, I don't know if we'll be branching or reductive.
Yeah, and that definitely brings up a good point, is that you got, like, a lot of these aren't just going to be like, oh, this game is branching, this game is reductive. We've talked about already how Destiny, like the raids themselves are String of Pearls. And what it sounds like you're talking about, that there is a bit of a branching element in there, but you'll see as we get down to these ones down here, that Skyrim could fit into more of these as well. So it's not like these are set in stone, black and white. These are just common progression models that are in games that you can start to apply these on your own, right? So this could be a branching, and like you're saying with Skyrim, right? In each one of these little bubbles here where it says, gameplay and mutually exclusive result, all these could just say non-linear gameplay. So in each one of these, you have this non-linear gameplay that branches off at certain points. Jacob?
For reductive, thinking like World of Warcraft, just because depending on which race you choose is a different starting zone, but you always end up in the same zone, like for all the endgame content.
But there's no ending to World of Warcraft, is there? Just
Story.
There's like a story.
The main
Depends
story
on what-
missions, yeah.
there are endings. There's no like endings to the entire
For
game.
Wrath of the Lich King, when you kill the Lich King, that's the end of the
Yeah.
Wrath of the Lich King story.
Yeah.
okay.
It's weird.
Yeah, usually most of the time MMOs will fit. All MMOs will fit into Sandbox down here.
Wait, I was just trying to think, because I wasn't sure if entirely was. I was thinking more along the lines of where you the zones you progress through, not necessarily.
Okay, yeah, that's another good example of, you will have this, one inside of another in a smaller scale compared to a bigger scale. Wyatt?
I think the board game Battleship would be like a branching type. Because they're every move you make really is like immediately exclusive, has an exclusive result. You either miss or you hit the person's ship.
But
I think it'd be
yeah, I think that's actually reductive. I like that example a lot, and that's more reductive, right? Because you have this possibility and you miss. So like, okay, I know it's not there, so now I have reduced down to these. Because with like, what would be your unique endings in Battleship?
there's only one.
Yeah, there's one wins, one doesn't, right? So, but I like that example. It's a really good one. Because honestly, reductive isn't easy to find in video games a lot.
I got one for reductive, at least part of it, the Dragon Age. You have them also, it's up to a point it's reductive. You have variable stars with different races,
Mm-hmm.
3 different humans or something. And then you get into the game and it plays, and then you have to get to, once you get past the first area, or like the last,
Mm-hmm.
wherever you are, I don't remember, I haven't played it since I was like 18.
It does have unique endings.
Yes,
Yeah.
it stops being reductive up to a certain point. But,
So it's a bit mixture of both.
yeah, it is.
Okay.
Because everyone has to get to the meat. Because you get down to it, and then you're open-ended to go
Either direction.
You have to go to the Wood Elf Forest and like finish that area, get the Wood Elf Stone. Then you have to go to the Dwarven area, finish that area, get their health. Then you have to go somewhere else, get the human
Yeah.
get their health, and then you have to go here.
And then
finish
does
that
at the
area.
end
Then
you have
go
one
to
final
the meeting.
ending? Is there one ending or is there multiple different?
But you get to a meeting, and that is the reductive point, and then it starts branching again because of the
Okay.
choices you make at that meeting.
Yeah, so it's almost like in here in these branches you have a reduction that then branches off into another branch. So you can tell it starts to get really complex.
Although,
CJ?
my pick branching.
For reductive, I can give a pretty good example of one MMO. That's Final Fantasy 15. Because in the beginning of the game, depending on whichever class you start off with, you'll start off in one of the 3 different cities that's in the game and everything like that. And as you keep on going through the game and everything, like everyone just starts coming together in one meeting place. And there's a story. There's a story to it and everything like that. And pretty much everyone's working towards getting that one ending for that story.
So that would be reductive?
Yeah.
Everyone from level 1 to 20 has separate stories depending what city you start in, and then once you get to that point, you just merge together.
Cool. So yeah, Dragon Age is definitely a good fit for branching. Also, the Mass Effect series, if anyone's played that. Also, basically, it was both those games, Dragon Age and Mass Effect, was the choices you made in Game 1, you could import your save into Game 2, and et cetera, into Game 3. Miguel?
My question is, why Dragon Age can be a branching if you have multiple ways to start the game?
I was just going to plug it into both here, but that was what is, and even, I would say even, there's some elements of sandbox / football shaped into Dragon Age. There's definitely a unique game, right? Because there's a lot of different progression models going on at the same time. Eric?
For reductive, Elder Scrolls Online, because when you go to make a character, you pick your race, and then you pick your guild or clan or whatever you want to belong to, and then you pick the city you're from, and you have like 3 to choose from which character you pick. And then it's a story to all fix ending when you meet up with everybody, just like a Final Fantasy.
So there is a finite ending to that,
Yeah.
to the game?
So, I mean, you can still play after the story.
Yeah, it's just like WoW, but
I would think that may fit into football shape, but let me just go over,
but it doesn't have the same start, because in Elder Scrolls you have multiple starts amongst. Yeah, I think you have a lot of variation just to start out with one character.
gotcha. So it's the mixture of these two then.
Yeah.
So reductive, another really good one that's not a video game would be a Rubik's Cube, right? Because a lot of different possibilities to start out with. You're going to solve that first level, that first layer, and reduce down here, and then you'll solve the second one. And then if you're like me, you'll just get stuck because that last algorithm's too much.
I always forget that.
So then you always end up right here, basically when it's solved, it's completed. Also, does this look familiar to anybody as well? If any sports fans, any?
Yeah.
What does this look like?
Tournament.
Yeah, tournament bracket, right? You have a certain number of teams start here. They get reduced. You have one winner, right? So this could be a sports tournament.
Sports and esports tournament.
Yeah.
Any tournament.
Yeah, it could be. And also, another good example is a jigsaw puzzle, right? You dump all the pieces out on the table. They're all over the place. You got tons of possibilities. And then the first thing you probably do is put the border together and sort them, right? So then you down here, you have this point. And then you work on all of the, the bushes or the lower part. And then you leave the completely blue sky for the ending. And then you have the completed puzzle.
Blackjack particularly count cards because it's reducing the probabilities.
I could see that fit in there. Definitely.
Well, I guess technically there is more than one final ending.
All right, so on to the final two, football shaped and sandbox. So these definitely have some overlaps, and we've already talked about them a little bit. But obviously, so football shaped, you still have that single start, and there almost could be a third one in here now that I'm thinking about it, and there's even more, more games and even more innovation coming out here and there. That it's starting to become that some of your football shaped games are giving you that variable start that we're talking about. So most of the times you have a single start, so you start as the same character, you have that same experience. The entire game is completely non-linear. You can do whatever you want. You could do any number of side missions or side objectives, but really you're just going to play through the game. But you do have that final ending. You have that final cutscene where you kill the last boss or, escape or, do something cool at the ending, and then you have that final cutscene. And then you probably will end up getting dumped into the game where you can continue to play in this non-linear space, but you still have that final mission where you can do that thing to give the player some closure. CJ?
From what I've heard from a lot of people, I guess that can go along with football shape is Final Fantasy 13 because there's like a lot of animosity going on with people saying that the game itself is just non-linear, and it just didn't like fit in with like the whole Final Fantasy franchise. It just pretty much you just thrown in the game, do whatever, then like you said, just get to.
Then you have this ending. Okay. My Final Fantasy knowledge isn't perfect, so I'll take your word for it. Okay, so you have this linear portion. So it's almost like you have a linear up to one point, and then it becomes non-linear. Okay, you can definitely see how you can start to blend these together to get some pretty interesting, different gameplay. John?
Football shape, I was going to say Golden Sun, because you can go wherever you want from the beginning of the game.
All right, and then you have a same single start. Everyone starts as like the same character.
Yeah, you start as the same character. You pick up the people, but you can go to the very end. You can, but like that choke point before that boss. Of course, you need items and stuff.
Yeah.
Like that,
Okay. Yeah, that fits. D'Angelo?
I'm going to say football shape, and I'm going to say GTA only because when I was younger, I never played any of the missions. I literally just killed people and used cheats.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. That's a great. So basically, that's really the big difference. So sandbox really, right? Obviously, you have this variable start, a lot of different options, completely non-linear, and most of the time there's just no ending. The game will just go on forever. So most of the time, these are your MMOs. That's where a sandbox comes in. And yeah, so GTA is a great example for football shape. So really, football shape you want to think of as your sandbox type games where you have that progression. Even it could be sometimes you get that string of pearls where you have certain missions you're going to complete. You're going to see these checkpoints, but overall it's really non-linear and you don't have to do those at any certain point. Oh, come on. So CJ?
Sandbox, I mean, really, like Minecraft, Rust, Sonata, a lot of those games are.
Fallout, Skyrim.
No, not Fallout.
Well, no, yeah. So Minecraft is a great example for sandbox.
Skyrim, like you said, and Fallout 4, no, you're pretty much beginnings of a fixed area.
Sandbox. Wow. Any MMO.
If anything, Fallout and
More football.
Skyrim will be more football shape.
Yeah, definitely. So Skyrim. Crackdown. I'm super excited for the third one. I hope it doesn't suck. John? Okay, yeah, definitely.
No, because there's one start.
Which one?
Monster Hunter.
Yeah, you do start one area.
There is one start to Monster Hunter. I have it in my backpack.
With one,
I was going with it has no ending.
It does not have an ending though. That's true. But it has one linear start.
like you start as the same character?
You start in town, you start in village.
No, Monster Hunter does have kind of.
It doesn't have a story, but you can keep playing after.
Yeah.
It's no real ending.
Yeah, it'd be more football shit, in a way. I guess like an extended.
For football shape, but like anything like a, say like a MOBA or like a first-person shooter match, like in multiplayer. Would those count?
That's an interesting point. MOBAs themselves are definitely football shaped.
They'd be like variable start because you can all pick different characters, especially like the ones that have.
Yeah, but you all spawn on the same side.
Yeah, that's definitely getting to the point where it's this
Kinda like a
new
mix.
breed of, yeah, right? Again, it's like this a mixture because you have this overall, if you're talking about the single gameplay, then it's probably football shaped. But if you're talking about like I just downloaded this game and I'm going to play it now, it's probably more sandbox because I can play League of Legends or Smite or any of the MOBAs pretty much forever and I'm never going to get to an ending. So if you're talking about the career of the game, that's one thing. But if you're talking about like this one game I'm playing, this 15-minute this 15-minute like chunk of time, then it may fit into something different. So I'm gonna throw out a few different games at you guys and see if you guys can put them in the right category.
We're gonna argue a lot.
That's okay.
I will. So glad you recognize that.
All right. So what about God of War?
String of pearls.
No.
Yeah, because after you get done like fighting everything, you just walk around.
I am writing down String of Pearls.
God of Strings.
All right. What about Pac-Man?
No.
String of pearls.
I think it would be string of pearls.
Yeah, it's String of Pearls because there's multiple levels, right? You complete a level, you move on to the next one.
Also, you don't have to use the same path every time when you're in the same level.
Yeah, that would make each level a brand.
Like a lot of games mainly just fit.
Because each movie makes
No, because each level is non-linear. I can decide where I go.
Win or you lose.
All right, what about the Walking Dead series, the Telltale games?
Never played it?
Because you get different endings in those.
Yep, branching. And I haven't played it, but someone has told me that in the second, has anyone played the second game? Like Walking Dead, the second season? Apparently, you have? Is it true that when you play through that, the second game is reductive? Like you have these different starts depending on what you chose in the first game, but then it slowly gets reduced down, and you have one ending? Do you know if that's?
No, the second one is multiple endings.
It does have multiple?
At least 4, I think.
Okay.
Right now.
So someone lied to me. So that one is but that is the normal Telltale
How many endings is the first one?
model.
The first one has
3, you think?
Yeah, there's one ending. You leave with no one, and you find like the rest of your group. But what happens before that is all different.
Mm-hmm.
So the first one only has one ending. The second one has
Well, I guess at least 4 I remember right now.
Yeah.
I escaped when I was playing the first one with like 3 or 4 people.
You didn't, when you
First
leave,
episode of Walking Dead.
the first one?
Yeah. Yeah.
No,
The whole season?
You get separated from Clementine gets kidnapped, and Eli goes after her, and then Omar and his girlfriend are on the other side, so you just get like stranded.
No, I got it. I got it.
So what about Star Fox 64?
That is football. No, racing. Football. What? No. Racing. That's it. Football. football.
There we go.
Okay. You have one start.
No.
Always start at the same time.
No.
You always start at the same time.
Starbucks 64. There are 2 different endings to that game. There's not a fixed ending.
Two endings?
Yes.
Okay, then. Never mind.
It is branching.
Don't try it. Don't try it.
All right, so
Nope, there's 2.
what about The Sims?
Well, no, it's the one play bomb.
Yep, sandbox. Yep, because there's no ending. You basically play forever.
Well, I mean, depending on which one. Like,
Yeah.
Medieval has like little scenarios that
Mhm.
how you play.
All right, what about so what about a multiple choice test? You're just going to take a test like you will on Friday.
No pressure. Single start. Sounded ominous.
Multiple choice test. I guess I'd be string of pearls.
Why would it be string of pearls?
Because well, I mean, I guess not everyone has to start the first question, but most people start at the first question, and you know,
I think it's
how they answer it sometimes wouldn't be the same.
no, you're branching. Because everyone's going to get the same test. And then as you go through the test and everything like that, you will get different answers, start branching out like that. The unique ending would be A, B, C, D, F.
Well, I guess he's right because not everyone's gonna get the same grade, so I guess it'll be different.
Everyone's going to start at a single point.
The correct answer is linear.
Realistically, it should be
It is linear because you will, if you start and answer each question in series, I understand you may skip a question and come back to it. That may make it non-linear. It's not the same, but everyone's going to start the test. They're going to take it, answer all the questions, and have a fixed ending, which is the test is completed.
Aren't the multiple choices non-linear?
So the question, each question itself, yes, you could probably say it's nonlinear or even reductive, where I have these 6 choices. It's multiple guess, right? Where I have 6 choices, I got to cut out 2 more, and now I have 2 to pick from, and now I have this ending where I came up with the correct answer, or I've come up with a answer. Why is it doing this? So what about
What's the race where you pass the baton?
yeah, it's like a relay race, or that'd be
Would that be like a string of pearls though? That's a choke point when you're passing it to the next person. If you drop it.
Well, I think it would still be.
it would still be, it's almost linear with choke points because there's no non-linear element to running the race.
The order of which you place people, I guess, it had been on. It could be a string of pearls, but mostly linear.
Yeah. So what about the game Scraps? That's everyone that we're all working on for the next few months. String of pearls, exactly, right? So 2 levels of that I like to think of this on. So think about this as your own individual area for a second. So the player starts and they have certain number of objectives or mechanics to complete, and you can lay out your level and design it in a way where it doesn't have to be necessarily completely linear. You can give the player some choice so they can collect 3 or 4 different items in some order depending how they choose, but they're going to get to this choke point where they're going to complete their objective and move forward. So that you can look at this whole chain as your own individual area, and then also think about it as your whole team's area, right? When you come together as a team to where this is your whole area you've created. The player's going to complete, X, Y, and Z objectives in here, but eventually they're going to get to this choke point where they're going to transition to the next student's level. Right, going to go through here, do their objectives, then they're going to transition to the next area. So this is the type of gameplay we want to focus on. Don't think about making football-shaped and sandbox-type games or branching games for your level. Worry about that once you've got your job, once you've opened up your own company or formed a studio with your peers. Something a lot more contained for this project is what we want to see. We want to focus on density and the interactions rather than creating games like this massive and these large games that we've seen that are definitely successful. But those are teams of hundreds of people with millions of dollars on the line, with years of development time available to them. We only have a few months where individuals and a team of 3 to 6 people, and we're still learning, right? We're still going to be coming up across issues and working around the skills that we have. So stick to this type of gameplay for now to really showcase everything that you've learned to this point. Question?
Was the example that you showed us, was that linear? Because you had to collect the batteries
Mm-hmm.
Would that
Yeah.
be linear or string of pearls?
His was there's only a few spots in his level I can see it being non-linear, and that was specifically after he breaks down the bulldozer. You have the telephone pole you can knock over, and you have the little building that you can jump up and get inside, and each one of them have a battery. So it doesn't matter which one you do. You can do one or the other, but you have to do both to progress. And then the other scenario was when you get to the final top, once the plant explodes and you go to the top portion, there's a little platforming section, and then there's the turret that has a battery. You need to get both of those to activate the crane. So you can tell that what I'm describing isn't like over the top, like completely non-linear, but there is an option there, right? You can save the platforming for later if you want, but you're going to need to get both to progress. So his was definitely showcased definitely very well this linear element with little chunks of non-linear in between. All right. Any questions at all about this this document or any of these progression models? No? All right. I can share this document with you guys when I post the announcement. So if anyone wants to have it for themselves or take a look at some more of the examples, feel free to do so. So this will be in the announcements for everybody. All right. So now we're just going to talk a little bit about the flow chart and the map for a short bit, and then we'll take a short little break. So the next thing you're going to do, and now this would be afterwards, after you've completed your LDD. So when I'm talking today, it's going to be pretty much about the next few assignments and what you're going to be working on this week. So the ILA for next class, the ILA assignment is the flow chart. And I talked a little bit already about the example. So I brought up the example already one time just to showcase the featured asset and give you guys an example of the featured asset. But now if I take a look at the flow chart itself, all right, so the point of this assignment is to really think about how your area is going to flow together. So everyone remember flow charting from GD1? Probably got way more of it than you ever wanted. You got all types of flow charts. You understand it. So this is a little bit different. So we're not going to necessarily doing it one-to-one, making a flow chart like that. But this is more of how your level is going to flow together. So there's a lot of principles that you learned from GD1 and how to create a flow chart that will definitely be applicable to this assignment. So the same way that you did your brainstorming first before you started your LDD to get your ideas down and come up with a lot of different variety of setups and interactions, you want to do the same thing with your map itself, right? So the map itself is the very final step. So if you just come in day one before you even come up with an LDD or an idea and go to your map and start to build something, and then you realize, oh, well, I don't want to have this mechanic, I'm going to do this different mechanic, or I'm going to move my warehouse over to the other side of the map. Now you just have to start readjusting everything and tweaking things, and you're reworking a lot that's wasted time at this point. So this is really important to do this step and not overlook it, because it will save you a lot of time and make sure your map is that much more thoroughly thought out. So this is definitely a very important step. Same thing goes for the brainstorming before you do the LDD. So this template is pretty much the exact same as the map template. You'll see basically all the same icons here, except over here I just have some of these basic flowchart icons I have to just represent your spaces and your interactive areas. So let me go and pull up, see if I have some examples. So here's one that I created, and after I'll go over this one, I'll show you another student example that was really well done. So a lot of the stuff that we require and that you're going to do in your flowchart is directly applicable to your map. So you'll see in the map you have to have reference images basically just showcasing what you want your map to look like, just to get a better sense of the vision across. And again, this is going back to why you do the visuals and setting assignment, is to see how tough it is to actually build some of this reference. So you'll be putting the reference together here, and then you'll be able to very easily just copy these images and paste them onto your map. So it's not like you're doing all this work and throwing it out. A lot of this work is directly tied to the map itself. So basically each one of these rectangles here is just an interactive area, or some area in the level. I don't necessarily want you to think of it as a room, because then it would basically be, here's this room, and now here's a hallway, and here's this room, and now here's a hallway, and now this room. It doesn't have to be like that. It's just an interactive space. It could be a corner of a room, it could be a portion of a room, it could be a floor. It really is, there's no like definitive, this is a room, or this is this area. It's just, this is what's going on in this section of my level. That's all I want you to be thinking about right now. The layout doesn't matter. So what I really want you to showcase is, if I go ahead and group all these together, they are grouped. There we go. What? For the map, yes. So if you just start to, the whole point of doing this is, once you have all these icons and everything laid out, so I know, like, all right, in my control room, I'm going to have a turret. Where's one of my objectives? There's going to be a puzzle to solve, and I'm going to have to write a script for getting my lever system set up properly. And now in here, I'm going to have, there's going to be dynamite that I need to explode the door. So there's going to be an explosion. Here's a collectible. Going to have a special lighting, a checkpoint. So I'm just putting these icons in here. So again, when you go over to do your map, you know exactly what icons need to be included on the map itself, because you've already defined it in these interactive areas. So you can go ahead and look through this and get a good sense of just the planning that I had come across. Also, you'll notice in here, I'm explaining, the usage of my IPM, right, and really laying out my mechanics and how they're going to flow. This is really the other good importance, and the reason why you want to do this assignment is to get the flow of everything in your level working, right? And that's why it's called the level flow chart. Is how do I introduce these mechanics to the player, and how do they practice them? Because you don't want the player to enter the control room and now here's this mastery level platforming section that I have no idea how to solve because it's the first time I've seen it. So you want to definitely be going in here and actually pacing out your different mechanics and how you're going to be using them. And then really what you can do is, once you have this completed, start to group them together, and if Google will cooperate with you, which it sometimes does, you can just start to move these around. So be like, okay, what happens if the player goes into the closet, or they come, they start in the closet, they come out of there, and then they go into the generator room first, and then they get to the control room. How does that play? So you can start to quickly just move these around and shuffle them around, get a bunch of different variations and variety to your level to see exactly what the best idea that you can come up with is. Also, one thing to think about is, super common mistake is that just because my player start is over here and it's just a horizontal progression all the way over here and here's my end, that doesn't mean that that's how the level is going to actually look. If you actually pay attention that the player starts down here and their goal is to make it to this top floor of this building, so they're actually ascending vertically in this space. So this doesn't necessarily mean at all that these are how these rooms are how it's going to be sequenced on the map itself. This could very well be all vertical like this. Like I can just start to move these down and it doesn't matter, right? All these are going to be the exact same. So the level is still reading the same right now, right? Nothing has changed. I'm just moving things around. So the layout of the flow chart doesn't necessarily matter, right? It's the layout of the map, and that's the very final step of how everything is connected and flows together. So the flow chart itself is for laying out the mechanics and the pacing and how the player is going to get from area to area. And then the map itself is really just the look of it, how everything is going to be planned out and the overall feel and look of the map itself. So let me give you an example of a student's map. This was one of the on-campus guys, that definitely a very visual student. And I can show you their video if you'd like to take a look at it from their gold submission. But this was his map, or his flow chart here. And you can see there's a lot of text along the sides here, a lot of detailed information. Again, this isn't work that's just going to get thrown away, because these notes will be directly, basically copy and paste from your flow chart into your map. There may be some things you refine, some things you add. Some in the map itself, you can start to talk more about the look of it and the design itself and the feel of the level, the mood, things like that. In the flow chart, I just care about the mechanics and the pacing of it. So again, if I just zoom in on the flow chart itself, you'll see basically each one of these little interactive areas. And this student was able to just, grab one of these whole little cells here and just start to move them around, right? Like, as I said, like, what if they get to this generator room first and then they get to the barrier control room, and start to just move them around? So in his level, he had this water cart, or this little companion vehicle that went along with you while you were in the level. So here is also showing the flow of that, to where you can access this cart from these 3 different areas, and then when you move on to the fire truck blockade, the vehicle moves along with you. So you get a really good sense of the pacing. You can definitely tell that the amount of effort that went into this. It wasn't, definitely not like mine, where mine was okay, but this was definitely put together in a few days, and he definitely took a lot of effort to complete it thoroughly. And this is definitely a polished portfolio piece, in my opinion. If I were a potential employer, I'd want to see the flow chart and then see the map. Just real quickly, just show an image of the flow chart, show an image of your map, and then show a short little video of your level. That just shows you you've took something from concept all the way to completion. And that's really what employers want to see, is that you've finished something. You've completed a project. And they want to see that progress along the way. So this is a really good step. And this really helped this student, and I've definitely seen a lot others, really be able to clarify their vision from just doing the flow chart alone. Another really good detail that he put into his flow chart was that he actually labeled these little sections of the map, or of the notes themselves. So it seems straightforward, but if you just submit a real long list of notes, like here's my notes 1 through 30, and it makes it a lot tougher to read, because then I have to go look through this long list where it's like, oh, I want to know more about the generator room. I can come right to this little section here, and it talks just about that area. So really good way to break up the amount of information, because on the flowchart and the map, there can be a lot that you're trying to communicate. And the easier you can make it for readers, the more likely people are actually going to take the time to read through everything and not get bogged down by too much information at once. Question?
How do you estimate the time? Is it just a complete guess?
That's a good question. So how do you guesstimate how long each portion of your level is going to take? So right now just a guesstimate. If any of your mechanics or any of your minor little setups that you want the player to do, test them out. Feel free to just go into the level and just almost simulate, even if you don't build it properly, just simulate, okay, I'm going to walk over here, do this thing, I pick up this object with the grab knob, come over here, and just time yourself. And for this assignment, don't just say, all right, the whole level is going to take me 4 minutes, done. Really just try and think about each one of these little areas at first. So, the gas station, the player's going to spend about 45 seconds here. And now in the tunnel entrance, this amount of time. So break it down into smaller little chunks. And just do your best right now, just estimates. And remember, those minor setups that we worked on that are in your LDD, those should take about 10 to 15 seconds to complete each one of those. So you can use that as a benchmark for how long everything's going to take. But then next week, we're going to actually bring the maps. Once you guys create your first version of the map, we're going to bring that into Unity and actually run around on it and actually get a much more set in stone time to see how big the level is, how long it takes them to complete it. So for right now, just do your best to estimate it and keep that in mind, and then you'll be able to hone that in even further. So that's like let me just go back. That's like the precursor to the map assignment. So you definitely want to spend a little bit of time. Like the flowchart is an ILA assignment, so I'm only guessing it should take you, you know, an hour and a half to 2 hours to get something really cemented in and really just be able to get to this point where you can start to just move things around. Even if you don't want to include all this text, if you just want to say the area, the main objective, and like one or two setups that the player does, and just start to move them around and get a better sense of how you want your level to progress, it'll definitely be worth your while. So now let me go to any questions at all about the flow chart.
Can we use the program we used for
Lucid chart?
Yeah. You can import pictures into that.
I'd really like you to use Google Draw for this assignment.
Okay.
If you want to,
It just looks so. I don't like how it looks. It looks so clunky.
yeah, I mean, you can really do it however you want. If you want to use like these arrows here, or like create your own actual arrow, or use the arrow itself, you can. Well, I mean, I'm not grading this. I just want you guys to work on it. So you can do, if you want to use Lucid Chart, that's okay. It's totally up to you. This used to be like a graded assignment, but we removed it because it was very repetitive to this feedback, and the map feedback was almost identical. So we just made this one of the ILA assignments so you're able to get more feedback on your map and more time to iterate on that. So if you want to use another software, go for it. All right, let me see if there's anything I missed. Did I see another question? Was there someone else have their hand up? Yeah?
Do you only want like main rooms, so to speak? Like trying to put this in like only like main parts of your map. So say you got like a place where it's gonna just hold a piece or something like that. Do you want that small area as well, like a picture of where that would be, or do you just want like the rooms, or not rooms, but you know, like
yeah, like each interactive area. I'd like to see one like you know, one square or one volume for that interactive area, and in there you could say that there's this hidden item off here or something like that. But you don't have to say every little individual area, every little room you want, but just think about the larger areas. Think about it on a larger scale.
So it's just taking like a picture of the general room.
Yeah, just get a feel for what it is you want to build. All right, so the other question I get that I recommend having on your flowchart, have at least 5 collectibles, and you probably just want to write down your most innovative, your most unique ones, the most interesting ones. Like, yes, I'm sure some of you will have some where you move some boxes out of the way or you move some object out of the way and get a collectible. That's fine. But really just showcase in your flowchart like your best 5, your top 5 and most interesting ones. But you will just remember that here I have, you will have 15 collectibles in your map. So I get that question a lot. How come we have to have 5 in our flowchart and 15 in our map? Well, that's why I just want to see you adding at least 5 to have some pacing already in your flowchart. All right, that's pretty much that. So now I'm going to go on to the map. How you guys doing? Do you want to take a break now or in like 15 minutes?
How long will it take you to explain that?
I'm good.
Probably about 15 minutes. After? Okay, cool.
We can work afterwards.
All right, so the map itself. So definitely take a look at the common mistakes. There's a few of these in here that are definitely important to, like a lot of these are applicable to when you're actually building the level. But again, a lot of this building the level comes from designing it first. So you want to take a look at these again to make sure that you're not doing anything that's definitely standing out for something that's against these mistakes that we see all the time. So one thing I definitely want to point out is this one down here, Dark Souls. Probably wondering like, why does that have its own category? We see this a lot, all the time, and the reason we call it Dark Souls is that games like Dark Souls, Super Meat Boy, basically you're what?
Hard and punishing.
Yes, exactly. Hard and punishing, and you're okay with making the player frustrated. We want to stay away from that. We want to give players a enjoyable experience, and we can still give them some type of emotion and give them an interesting experience without it being overwhelmingly frustrating. So have you guys seen the movie Austin Powers? Yeah? All right, so you know the scene in the first movie when Dr. Evil finally catches Austin Powers and he wants to like tie him up and put the sharks with the laser beams on their head and make this all elaborate, and then Scott Evil comes in and he's just like, what are you doing? Why don't you just shoot him in the head? And then Dr. Evil's look at him like he's crazy. He's like, why would I, what? Why would I just shoot him in the head? I want to, make it like the traps with the lasers and make it all. And so Scott Evil he's what you guys want to be. These are those people that are designing Dark Souls. That's Scott Evil. He just wants to kill the player over and over again and punish them over and over again. When Dr. Evil, he's what game designers have been doing all this time. So when you guys have been playing games all your lives, you've been tricked by these game designers.
Except for Dark Souls.
Except for Dark Souls. Like you think you're going to die, you think you're right on the brink of death, but you end up saving that princess or completing that final objective or beating the boss, and they've built this experience in a way that they know you're going to get away, but they've created it in such an awesome way that it feels very climactic and you feel like, yes, I snuck away, I did it, I've accomplished that. But really the game designers have been doing that behind the scenes the whole time, and they know you're going to get away. So that's what you have to start thinking about, crafting this experience for players, not being so punishing, but balancing it between being rewarding and feeling accomplished. And you can still tie in some story, give them some backstory to set the mood and the theme, things like that. But you don't want it to be so punishingly hard that it becomes frustrating. Because again, remember, this is something that you're going to be getting a job with. And you're going to be showing off this demo video of your area, or someone's going to be playing through your level, and they're probably not going to be the best gamer, honestly. It may be someone in HR that's playing your level or watching a video, and if they see they're dying over and over again, or they see you struggling to play your own area, that may not be the best avenue to get a job. I mean, unless you're applying to work on the next Dark Souls game. But really, overall, you want it to be this experience that players are going to enjoy and they feel like they're the hero, right? You want the player to feel like they're Austin Powers and they just snuck away from this crazy elaborate trap that you've designed for them. So that's really the only one I wanted to give a little spiel on for these. Definitely just read through this. Again, I'm not going to I could give a whole lecture on this, but we give this to you there, and we've given it to you in the first week. So definitely read through some of these and go back to this. I'll definitely mention them again, I'm sure, when we go through the map presentations. So after you do your flowchart, you'll be able to use a lot of that information to start to build your map. And if you look at the template, it's basically the exact same thing as the what's it called? The flowchart template, except I don't have those little icons there. And you'll also see we have one other difference to where we have wrong one. Yeah, we have these breadcrumb. We have different collectible types in here, and so definitely with these, feel free to modify these and adjust these any way you want. But like everything else in this class, you're given this as a template, and that doesn't mean you need to stick by it. You can modify this, change it, however much you want to. There is a website, really helpful. It's gameicons.net, and there's game-icons.net. So you can go to this website, and all these are completely free icons. They update it basically every day. Here's the last update was today. Yeah. So here's all the new ones that they've added. So feel free to come to this website and utilize these. You'll see some of these are some of my icons from the template are from this website. Some of them I made myself. But yeah, come into here. You can search for what you want. You can go by different categories. A lot of awesome stuff. And then if you select the icon itself, you can basically select the foreground color, select the background color, change the frame to whatever color you want. Here's the frame size, so you can make it really big or really small. Right? So a lot of awesome stuff. And here you can make it transparent if you want to. And then basically here you can just download it as an image and then drag and drop it into Google Draw. Bless you. So yeah, that gives you the ability to really just customize this template however way you want to. So if there's an icon that you want or you're trying to explain something with text, grab an icon for it and put it on the legend too. Really make sure it's very clear what those icons are representative of, and it makes it much easier to read the map when you have more information that's just a visual element as well as the text that goes with it. So that's definitely a helpful website. You don't have to do that. You don't have to make your own icons, but you know, the more you do, the more effort that you put in like that, it really goes a long way and helps you stand out from the other maps. All right, so yep, here you'll see add the reference images for each room and space. That doesn't necessarily mean that you need every single image for each individual room that you have in your level, but overall each interactive area or each portion of your map, you want to include at least one image in there. So the 15 items, there we go, and here it says 15 items. I'm just going to change this collectible because they don't all necessarily need to be hidden. So one of my favorite games that I've played in the last probably, 10 years, 5 years, in terms of just collecting items is probably Crackdown 2. Just fantastic job of just making them so interesting in a way to where you collect one, you can like see the next one, and they breadcrumb you, right? So the term that I'm using, breadcrumb, and you'll see it on here, this icon, it doesn't mean, no, I'm actually picking up a piece of bread off the ground. It means that there's actually, you're using the collectibles and placing them in your level to catch the player's attention and drive them to go to a certain way. So if I see there's a ledge up high and I see a collectible up top there, if you're a player, what's the first thing you think? How do I get up there, right? There's a collectible up there. That means I must be able to get up there somehow. So now it's changing how I'm playing. I'm looking around the environment, analyzing it differently, looking for things to help me get up to that point. So breadcrumbs are a really good way to help players, to guide players and help communicate them. So use that as one of your different types. Hidden items are pretty straightforward. They could just be extra hidden collectibles there that are just extra goodies. Again, you don't want to just have them be, the player turns around and there's 5 collectibles hanging out behind them. Actually give it some type of interaction, even if it's just moves an object out of the way or slide slide like a board on the wall out of the way or something. Give the player some action other than just, here's this item on the desk, I just walk up to it, my collider collides with it, and I move on. There's some in your level you may want to have that way, like say the player walks into a new room and there's like I know you guys haven't seen this video yet. You'll see it maybe next month. But like when the player walks in and there's a Gravenol upgrade sitting right on the desk, right? That's okay. Like a major, this is required for progression. Having 1 or 2 like that is okay. But you don't want to just have all of your 15 items just, this one's on the desk, this one's on the ground, this one's on a ledge. Really try and add a lot of variety and interaction to those. So you'll see here in the notes section on the map, this is for filling out the setups themselves and the interactions. And this is where you can break it down into the different areas to basically what's going on throughout the way. And down here in the collectibles, you'll see it says fill in setup here. Anybody want to take a shot at what that means? Yeah, you put the actual action. What does the player need to do to get this collectible? If it's a breadcrumb, just say this item is, you can define what the item is in here, like say like cash. This item is used as a breadcrumb to lead the player to the generator objective or something like that. Just be specific in what the setup is. I don't want to see a list of like scrap metal, medicine, keys, like things like that. I want to see what is the action that the player is doing. And I would think that because I wrote fill in setup here that it would be pretty self-explanatory, but the amount of times I just get, what the collectible is too many. So definitely just use this list to not only write in your setups, but then you can also reflect and look at, okay, I've got 8 in here. The player's just moving a box and getting an item. How can I make this a little bit better? How can I add a little bit more variety? So this list will definitely be helpful to you as well coming down the road in the future. Question?
So shouldn't the setup be set up in such a way that you do introduce practice mastery as well?
Yeah, yeah, and that will be your IPM will be reflected in the flow chart itself. If you want to include that in your notes in here as well, I'm totally fine with that. That's probably much better because it's much easier to read that, where you can say, okay, at this point they're introducing, here is practice. That's fine. If you want to carry that on, I encourage that. Another really good point that I want to make is the icons themselves. Don't scale any of them, especially like the ones, like obviously these little volumes and things like that you can scale up. If you want to make some trees or bushes larger than others, that's fine. But like the car and the player start, right, those are very important that you don't change them. And the reason is because they're already to scale to each other right now. So when you go ahead and build your level properly, and then you can bring it into Unity, everything is going to be to scale to each other. So if you build this correctly, you put the player near this car, and they're going to be the right proportion that they should be to each other. And then it's even more important because when you guys bring these together as a team, right, like say Marcus keeps his the same, but Jacob scales his player start down really small, and Eric scales his player start up really big. Right now they go to put this level together. Marcus's area is looking good, Jacob's area is very close and clustered, and Eric's is all spread out, right? And the reason is because that everything was scaled before you even get started, right? So it's important that you keep everything uniform like this because it can definitely change how your level ends up being built. So it could take a good design and turn into just poor implementation because things were scaled all wonky and out of place. So just don't scale any of the icons. More specifically, the player start and like the car are the two big ones. You just use those as reference and always keep them the same size. Yeah, so most of that, most of the icons themselves are pretty self-explanatory. Use them where you need to, and the more that you put them in, the more planning that you do, you'll be able to see like, okay, I'm going to have a cutscene here and a particle effect, and there's going to be a story element, and I'm going to have to write 5 scripts for this. Maybe I want to think about reworking this or keeping it in scope now. So use these icons and really think about, okay, how am I going to actually build this? Because again, this is all stuff you're going to be building. So if you feel like your scripting skills aren't like the strongest, or you're not yet where you want to be, don't design something that's too difficult for you to build. Think about how you want to do this yourself. And again, when the Des 3 students come in here, take a look poke around and see what they're working on. I know D'Angelo, that was awesome on Friday. You basically went up to every group and just kind of checking out their projects. Definitely encourage that, to really see what others are working on, see what your peers have accomplished, and that'll definitely help you gauge where you're at and how much you can work on the next few months. All right, and then the only other things that are vitally important is the terrain, because again, you're going to be tested on terrain and level design, so you just have to include it in your map, as well as the player path. So you want to have a player path in your map to showcase ideally where players are going to go and what you want them to do. So let me pull up a few examples in here. So this was another on-campus student. Overall, his usage of the tool and his actual construction of the map are very, very well done. So here is another point the point I made about the notes not being like broken up. It just makes it tough to read, to where I have to come over here. I'm like reading through the map, and I see, okay, note 7. Now I come over to this point. I find 7. It's just a little bit longer, and visually, I think it's a lot nicer to have it broken up into little chunks of notes. But that's basically is a little tidbit of polish information. It's not necessary. But overall, his actual construction and usage of this tool, because obviously Google Draw isn't Photoshop. There's a lot of problems with it. It's not the best, but you can see how you can create awesome work with just these simple shapes and some custom things that you can work on yourselves. So one thing to keep in mind up until this point here, just the density and the amount of interaction. You notice that he's actually just putting stuff right on the player's path. I see that very common all the time, is that you'll have this player path and you'll have all this cool stuff off to the side. No, put stuff like right on the player's path. Make them do different interactions along the way. So definitely really good pacing throughout here, and then except to this point right here. And this actually changed in his final level because this was so empty, but this is what I'm talking about, to where you come in this room and it's like, okay, now get to the crane, and the crane's over here. Now I'm just walking. All right, I made it, cool. But why not give the player something cool to do, right? Like this collectible that's all the way down here, why not put it like somewhere in this area and give the player some setup to complete, right? But overall, like, I think just the construction and the amount of detail that went in here is definitely what I'm looking for in terms of quality. So definitely just review this. There's a lot to take in some of these, and you can read through the notes themselves. But this map specifically, I really like the construction of everything that went into this. Also, the flow of his map was really changed from the first submission to this one. So at first,
Oh, is this the final map?
this is his final submission, yeah.
Except for the part. Like, this is the final
Yeah,
map.
well, he didn't change it in his map, but I know when he got to level design and I saw his level, I kind of gave him a suggestion of what to put in here, and he went with that, and he made this, there's like this little broken down catwalk that you like jump across here, and then you move something out of the way, and then you drop down, and there was like sand that filled in all of this. So it gave the player something else. He added a bit more in here. So another thing that he adjusted was his overall layout. So at first, this building over here was like over here at this point. So the player needed to come to the crane, see that they needed to go find it and activate it, go over here, activate it, and now walk all the way back. And I was like, well, why not you just lay out your level in a way to where as soon as they activate it, they can like drop down and break through this glass and come back down. So that was just one little layout thing that he adjusted. So again, this is goes back to the flow chart itself. Think about, okay, how does the player get from this area back to this next one? Do they have to go through this middle area again, or do they is it just laid out in a way where it all just flows and connects back to itself? So definitely what I really like too is some of these setups in here where it's a lot of interaction, a lot of tight, dense little spaces that there's a lot going on. The more space you have like this, like big empty rooms, it just takes a lot more time to make it feel populated, right? Putting assets in there, putting certain decals, making it actually feel like it's a lived-in space that it could exist. And the more space you have, the more time it takes. That's a direct connection. So don't try and do too much in the amount of time that we have. All right, so let me show you another map. And this one was actually this one was from a few months ago, also from on campus, but also really good usage of just the density going on in here and just the overall interaction. So it doesn't seem like over the top super flashy, but it's very clean, very efficient, and definitely within scope, and was very much able to be implemented. And if you guys want to see like a video of this one or the build of this level specifically, I can share that with you as well. But you can also notice like just the flow that's everything's going on through here, and the amount of interactions are very dense. So I also have an image on here. Desktop. So what I did was I took a few of the maps and I just made a silhouette out of them. Find it. Because one common thing I see all the time is a level that's just submitted as a as a square, right? Here's my rectangle, and I'm going to put my level inside of here, and that doesn't make for compelling and interesting, gameplay or interesting level flow. But you can see, where is it? You can see here, if you just look at the shape of the level, there's a lot of intricate shapes that are going on here that this directly leads to much more interesting gameplay. It's much better to actually look at visually. Oh, here it is. So there is just a silhouette of his level, right? A lot of you could just look at that image and you could tell that, yeah, that's probably a pretty interesting level, right? There's some cool stuff going on there because it's not just a square. It's not just a rectangle with information in it. So don't think, another one I see is don't think that you have to like stay in this space. You can't move this at all. If you just come down here to this corner, you can make this much larger, smaller if you want to. But yeah, don't think that you need to just cram everything in this small little space right here. Let's see where we're at. So yeah, just the amount of detail that went into this one. Also, just he used a lot of custom icons, and you'll probably notice a lot of these were from straight off of game icons, like this one, elevator, security camera, breakable wall. A lot of good stuff in here, and definitely a lot of interaction in a short space. All right, and then the last one I'll pull up before I let you take a short little break. This one was, so I want you to know that if you take a look at this one, this was a team level. So this was back when, oh, no, here's an example of a vertical level. So another good one to take a look at if you want to have some type multiple floors. So he did a really good job of, here's this cross-reference section, so it's basically showing it from the side view, these different levels. Now here is basically the different floors, and you'll see that this room in the center, this is the overlap, that's the silo in the middle, the missile silo, and the different.
Wasn't he presenting like when they had the first day?
He was, yeah. He's a Des 3 student right now. And then basically here is the color-coded overlay of showing this is all on one floor, this is a separate floor, and then here's like the silhouette of the whole level. So if you want to do something with multiple floors like this, and vertical transitioning is always much more interesting for players. So if you want to do something like that, I recommend having some type of cross-section like this, as well as like a overall silhouette. And this will help you actually build this when you're in Unity, because everything has to line up on top of each other. So it's one thing to plan it out in here, but if it doesn't physically connect, you'll run into some issues. So definitely plan it out this way if you have a vertical one. And then, so this was when it was a team level. So when you look at this map, don't be like, oh my God, I have to make all of this. This was, here it says Area 1, Area 2, Area 3. Each one of those was a different student. So this was back when they built the map as a team. We've changed it just a little bit, so now you're individual, where you design your area individually, and then you're going to connect them later on. So that's just one thing to point out. I see that a lot, and it's probably from people just looking at the examples and not watching any of the lectures, or not fully understanding, and then they go ahead and just do too much. So make sure that you're just working on one area, and specifically this Area 3 here is one I like to talk about a lot, because again, really good density and interaction, as well as good construction of the map. So this one in particular, I think, has hit all the areas really well. So I think this map did a fantastic job of construction and using the tool properly, and then also has some good flow and pacing and good setups. But then again, like as I said, also has some of these little spots in here where there's a little bit of emptiness. This map over here has a good job with construction and detail, as well as the player flow. You could probably use a little bit more of like visual polish, like right now is like what else is in these rooms besides these crates, things like that. And then this map over here, I think, does just a good combination of everything. Like this, you could see this like in anyone ever buy like a strategy guide, like a Prima strategy guide, where you actually see the level and it shows the little collectibles. That's what you want to be shooting for. That's the quality you want to shoot for this map. And just, yeah, the amount of detail he put into here, where it's these little piles of debris, and hey, look, a crowbar. Even he's got a crowbar. Who would have thought? So, he's got these little custom pill icons here. He also has a little security camera. Another really nice thing that I see that students take from this all the time, and I'm totally okay with that, because the amount of effort that he put into this is really awesome, is like in here where you can actually see, here's the wall and its thickness. right? The wall actually has some thickness to it, and then also like here's where like a window would be. So he's actually planning out, all right, here's a little glass pane where, you know, the player can see in and foreshadow what they're going to get themselves into. So actually think about how you were to build this. So if you were to take your map and bring it into Unity, what are the pieces that you would use to put this together? And if you think about that now and actually go in like, all right, here's this little piece of wall, here's this little glass pane, here's a little piece of wall in between there. Like if you actually take the time to do that, you're going to implement your level so much faster in Unity that way if you really plan everything out this way. So definitely really good attention to detail and just overall just thought that went into this. So just really what I want you to take away from all these and take a look at these examples is that this is the quality that I want to see. And you guys are going to have about a week to, you know, you have other assignments to work on, but you have about a week to do your rough map, and then we're going to do critiques and do presentations. You're going to have a week after that to make changes and modifications and improvements. So you really have a lot of time to work on this. I know you have other class and you have other assignments, but I definitely want to see a polished portfolio piece moving forward. So any questions at all about the map and everything that we went over? D'Angelo?
How many generators have you seen throughout like?
Too many. Too many.
I see that's like a common thing. It was like 3 of them that I seen actually had a generator that you had to do something with.
Yeah, I mean that just shows you that it's acceptable. You can do it, but you can do something else also. You know, there's other cool things. Yeah, you can do something a lot more innovative that either uses a generator or just has something else. Don't even call it a generator. Call it a, you know, alternate fuel device, or I don't know, something cool or interesting rather than just generator, just that name.
Glass panel next to it, call it solar panel.
Yeah, exactly, right? Or like another common one is like I see students be like, "Oh, go get the medicine." Like, okay, as a player, what does that mean? Like, I don't know. What is this medicine for? If you go, yeah, if you tell the player, go find the cure to the disease that has infected the entire bastion, and it's up to you to save us all. Like, now you're like, oh man, like this is important. I need to, like, I can't screw this up. I need to find this cure. Like, it's right. It's the same thing. They're both medicine, but it's how it's delivered to the player makes it feel much more interesting and much more impactful. Same thing with, you know, go turn on the generator. Like, okay, fine. So if there's no other questions, I'll let you guys take a short little break. And what I want to do is we can use the rest of this time to play through the example level. So the ILA assignment for today is to play the example level and do the discussion. So we can take the last half hour if you want. We can just take turns. I'll put the example level up on here, and we can come up. Usually what I'll do is one student can play through another student's area, and then we'll take turns. And that way we can all talk about it and critique it together, and that way you can just do the discussion. So if you want to play it on your own, you can, but we'll take some time to play through it together. Question?
I was able to get out of the map on that.
What?
On Eggplant, I was on their project. I was able to get out of the map.
You were?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's possible, and that was a 1 month project. So they designed that in a week, and they had an alpha. They had 1 week to get it functioning. They had the 3rd week to get the player communication in place, and then they had 1 more week for polish. So when you guys see it, it's impressive what they did in a month. So you guys have much more time, and you're also on campus. Those were online students, so they had that hurdle to deal with, that communication gap. So yeah, we'll take a look at that. So go ahead and take a break and come back about 10:35.